Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Global Adventure Show with travel writer Debbie Stone. So welcome back, everyone. Last month, travel writer Debbie Stone, who we call the Fire Monkey, talked about her time at Wrangell St. Elias National Park in Alaska. And now she's back to talk about Katmai, her adventures in Katmai National Park. And like last month, I said I was jealous, and this month I'm really jealous. And that's okay, because she's given us the tools to plan a visit there, because she went there. She took awesome photos of so many beautiful bears and little baby bears, bears fishing. And she's got a great article that you can check out on nationalparktraveling.com. But I'm jealous until I get there, but I will get there. So welcome back, Debbie. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well and excited to talk to you about Katmai.
Oh, I want to go. This is a park that is definitely on my bucket list, because you have incredible geology and incredible wildlife. And I can't believe, like, volcanoes, glaciers, bears, water, wildflowers, all in one place. Like, that's insane. And the history, just of explorers going out there and trying to figure out this volcano when they didn't even know exactly what they were doing at the time, but they were just fascinated and going out back. I think it was 1915 or something. Like Griggs went out there, he was a botanist, but not a geologist, and discovering this. And he's the one who made this park possible, right? The history of this Alaskan treasure, a national treasure for us.
Yeah, this was back in the 1800s. The largest eruption. Yeah, it was in the largest eruption in the 20th century was this one that they called Nova Rupta, and it was a whammy, so to speak. And this, a couple of years later, maybe 4 or 5 years later, was a botanist that came to explore the aftermath of this volcano for the National Geographic, and he couldn't believe what he saw, because it was just this landscape with thousands of steam vents and just, looked like some sort of bizarre alien, planet. And he called it the Valley of 10,000 Smokes, which stuck. And so, that's one of the big things in Katmai. You can take a tour of. You can see it from the skies on a flight seeing, or you can take a bus out there and visit it on the land. But this national park has 15 active volcanoes, so it's one of the world's most active locations for volcanoes. And so that's part of the reason that it was the desire to preserve the place was this volcanic activity. So it became a national monument in 1918. But the other element to this national park is the wildlife, in particular the bears. And so that is probably, I would say that is the big main draw for people who come to Katmai. Of course, they come and they are interested, many who are interested in the geological, but I would say the majority of people who visit are very much excited about seeing, the bears and getting a rather close-up and personal experience, so to speak, as they, particularly in the midsummer, because the bears are there to get their salmon.
And that's when you were there. So you got to experience that, right? At that time. Yes.
Yeah. Timed right. We were there in mid-July, which is really, there's about 1 million fish, 1 million of those salmon that have entered that system of lakes and rivers there. And so the bears, a couple thousand of them, are drawn, of course, to the water, to the rivers, to gorge on the fish, because they need to feast and they need to survive over the winter. And so they are there. And it is probably one of the largest congregations of bears that come that you'll be able to see. And Brooks Camp is the place in Katmai that you go to. And once again, there are no roads there. You either have to come in by boat or by air taxi. So I was staying in nearby Lake Clark Lodge, not nearby, it was another national park, Lake Clark, the Lake Clark Lodge, and they offer one of the excursions is to be able to hop on one of their little planes and do a float plane over there, land at Brooks, and then go and spend the day with the bears.
Well, that's really sad. I mean, that sounds awesome. So it's like a seaplane that you go over to on, like, hello. That to me is an adventure. I mean, is it like getting on those planes? I mean, do you get a little nervous getting on there? Like,
no. I love float planes. I think they're phenomenal. I love landing on the water. It's like having a kiss as opposed to like landing on a runway where it's like a jolt. You're landing on concrete. It's beautiful to land on the water. It's just, to me, and also you get such a really, to me, much more close-up view of the landscape, and you can actually see wildlife from the plane, and you can see the formations of the land and the rivers and the glaciers and the mountains and all of that. And it's a wonderful, that's once again part of the journey to get somewhere. And in Alaska, it's very common for you to take these float planes in places that are hard to reach.
Well, I love this because, just in being up above, as you're landing in a park, you get the scope a little bit better, because a lot of times we're driving to a park and then we're hiking in a park, but we're not understanding the full scope of the geological and geological diversity that also makes the biodiversity, right? So, you can, like Olympic National Park, let's take that, for example, which you've been to. You mean a rainforest, but there's glaciers on the other side, but it's hard to put it all in context unless you've been above. So when you're going in these parks, and you did this when you were going to, when you did your rafting trip in Utah, and you went on the Cataract Canyon, and you flew in and you had this amazing shot of being able to see where you were going to start rafting. And it really showed like the Colorado River Plateau in a way, right? It was like this, and there's some places we can see that, and on a road trip, you can look down, like, Petrified National Forest has areas, or National Park has areas where you see these plateaus, but from the air, you're able to get kind of this perspective that we don't get when we're amid the park. Does that make sense? That bird's eye view.
It's absolutely correct. Yeah. For example, we did take the plane, but it was after we'd done the raft trip, so you can see where you rafted. And so you're going over the landscape, and you see the river that you rafted and the canyon.
Oh, wow.
And you're going over Canyonlands National Park, so you get to see all those formations. And it really is this wonderful bird's eye perspective that, you're right, you do not get if you're right in the midst of it and walking in the land.
I want both. I want both. Because
so do I.
I know. That's it. I want both. I want to get it. I want to see where I'm going. That's kind of cool to do. So let's get to the bears. I mean, these are grizzly bears, right? Am I right or wrong on this? The kind of bears. Let's start with that.
Let's start with the fact that these are brown bears, and brown bears and grizzlies are technically the same species, but brown bears, from what I've learned from the ranger that was there, brown bears really refer to coastal bears that feed on the salmon, whereas inland brown bears are typically called grizzlies. So no matter what you call them, they have that pronounced hump between their shoulders. They have this kind of dish-shaped profile, long claws. They can weigh up to 1,000 pounds as adults. And so there they call them brown bears there because they are feeding on the salmon. So they are coastal bears. I've been in the woods and the land where they call them grizzlies. And so it's an interesting distinction that I was really not aware of, to be honest with you.
Mm-mm. I had no idea either. So this is pretty amazing for you to be able to be there and then see them fish. With it being so, it's not like as accessible as Yosemite, right? Were there a lot of people? I mean, it looks like you had a viewing station to be able to photograph the bears and watch them fish. So how does that work?
It's regulated. Yeah,
okay.
It's very regulated. And you get there, and the first thing that is a mandatory for any visitor, you walk up to the visitor center area, and you have to go through what's called Bear School 101. And so anybody who comes there has to go through this mandatory orientation where they talk about bear safety. And so you'll watch a little video, then the ranger will talk, and, you know, you're going to learn about the bears, that they are described as habituated, is which the term that we learned. And it means that they're accustomed to human presence, but they show little response when seeing people, typically on the trails or on the from the viewing platforms. But the rangers really stress the fact this means that they are not tame at all or friendly. They're wild animals, and they're unpredictable. And you have to manage your food and possessions, and there's places to put things that are locked up. And the biggest thing is to remain calm when you see one. If you happen to see one on the trail, along the beach, in the river, at camp. And the biggest thing is do not run. And they kept stressing that because, you know, bears, you can't outrun a bear. They can go up to 35 miles per hour. And if you run, they may look at you as a prey. You know, it triggers that predatory response. So, you know, basically there are rangers all over the place. There is a designated trail that you have to walk, and there are designated areas, and rangers are there because if they see a bear or bears walking down the trail and there's people that are coming and the rangers are there, they will tell the people to back up very slowly and, you know, give the bear space, get off the trail, let the bear take the trail. You know, the bear rules there, you know, and they, you know, want to make sure that, you know, these bears, that people limit their impact on them as much as possible. And they've been able to do this over the years because of the stringent reinforcements, the stringent restrictions that they have in place. And they have these dedicated platforms that you can be on. And the most dedicated one with the most restrictions is the Brooks Falls platform, because it's right there in front of the falls where the bears tend to congregate, because the salmon are trying to get up that waterfall. And so, you know, the bears know that, and they know that this is an obstacle for the salmon, and so they're there to try to get them. But there's also another platform that's called the Riffles platform, which is not regulated, and that's a little bit further down from Brooks Falls. But it also is a really wonderful place. We saw a lot of sows with cubs and other bears that were, you know, they wanted to avoid competition from the more dominant bears that hang out at the falls. So if you want to go to the Brooks Falls platform at high season, you give your name to the ranger and the number in your party, and then you go off to the Riffles platform, and they will come around and they will call names and tell you that it's your turn, that you can go to this platform. And they only allowed, at the time we were there, about 40 people, and you're only allowed about 30 minutes stay, 20 to 30 minutes, and then you are asked to leave, basically, so other people can take their turn. And at high season, you can be waiting there for, you know, over an hour or more. So, you know, go to the Riffles platform and look around and spend time, because you can get wonderful photography from there as well.
You know, I'm glad to hear that they're regulating, you know, that's really important. And
of course.
I know the Park Service does it really well. You know, it is getting like that. In our parks, we have to remember we're in nature's land, like what you're talking about with, you know, the park rangers going, okay, there's a bear, everybody chill. You know, it's so important that they're doing that kind of service, because we've got to let these bears eat when they can. This is a food thing. And the more we sometimes as humans don't understand that we're in the way of food source, you know, or causing drama at a time for an animal, that if we're making them have a you know, flight or fight kind of situation, that we're taking their energy for the day, and they are in survival mode more than we are.
Absolutely.
You know, going to
Absolutely.
So I love that you talk about that, and I love to hear that they're doing that. But man, what an opportunity. So those 20 minutes, you know, you're attuned, right? You're attuned. You are like,
you know, when we were at, you know, when we were at the falls, we watched, and I had a picture of this one dominant large male bear that was at the, you know, ledge of the falls there, and all he did was, you know, open his mouth basically, and he would catch the salmon. And so he expended very little energy to do that, but, you know, he was a dominant one. And others was fascinating to learn about it, but they had all these different fishing techniques. And so, some of them had the dash and grab, some of them dove into the water, and then some of them, we were told, use the snorkeling method, which is when they put their eyes and their muzzles in the water to search for salmon, like as if they have a snorkel on, but they have to keep their ears above the water because they have to listen if there's a possible threat of other approaching bears or anything. So it was fascinating to watch that. And then the sows, moms and their little ones, they were downstream from where these massive bears were more because, they're trying to be safe. The mothers are trying to protect, their little ones because the older bears sometimes do kill and eat the younger ones. So the sows are very vigilant. They stay alert. They're trying to teach their cubs how to fish because, that's necessary for their livelihood. And once the cubs get big enough, they leave mama and they're off on their own. So they have to learn how to fish. So we watched, this sow, and we watched how she was showing her cubs basically how to get the salmon, and then it was fun to see the little ones try on their own as well. So it was really, really fun. I mean, it was a wonderful experience and so close, you're just right there to watch that. And they have photographers that come from all over the world, with these huge lenses. I mean, they're huge.
Yeah, I know those.
I just had my little phone camera in it, and but I was like, I did get a chance to look into somebody's massive lens, and I was just like, oh my God, I could see the exact eye. I could look right into their eyes. It was fascinating, wonderful.
There are bear specialists out there, but again, I mean, that's what's so park is like, here's this really rough terrain that's of volcanoes. And then you have water and salmon and bears. Like that blows my mind about Katmai. I love the story about Robert Griggs because I just keep going back to him, not really even understanding where the volcano was erupting from. Where he thought it was not where it was. But he kept trying and kept going. I think that's a story because it was not easy. You've got to think back then. And I know I was talking about 1915 and I was thinking of the park time, but in the 1800s going out there, on an expedition was not easy. They were in a little tent. I mean, it's amazing the story of him. Like I did not know about this story and I'm kind of hooked about it. Like he didn't know.
Well,
and I don't think there were many geologists that
he
would
knew
go
that there
out
was.
there. Yeah.
Well, he knew that there was a volcano, this humongous volcano that happened, but he was sent by National Geographic to explore the aftermath of this volcano about 4 years after it happened, and it just to think that he was there doing that at that time is pretty crazy. And they say that. Thankfully, or fortunately, this volcano resulted in no deaths because it was such a remote and isolated area. Mm-hmm. Nobody was living in that area. Mm-hmm. But they say if it would have happened in, for example, Manhattan and New York, there would be zero survivors. It was just that catastrophic in terms of the damage that it did.
I've seen some footage of it in a National Geographic series on national parks, and of him and his team, which is a very small team, they're doing like handstands out there and stuff on the lava. Like you're sitting there like, in a way, I think they were kind of going stark raving mad, because you're out in nowhere. You're going to entertain yourself, but you are enthralled, which he was. And he didn't quite know he was a botanist, right? And yet, and he learned from experience by observing, writing down, doing, and yet the footage I've seen, I'm like, no way, these people were like, look at this, man, this is some crazy stuff. And the photos, I'm like, I'm amazed. I'm absolutely amazed about being out there. I feel like it's almost, like climbing Mount Everest in a weird way, like what they did. They didn't climb Mount Everest, but being that remote on your own in the middle of nowhere.
Absolutely.
Wow.
When I go there. We took a little bit of a flight scene tour on our way out of Katmai in order to be able to see the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. And, when we went over it, that landscape is so stark, and there's ash. The ash remains everywhere, and it really is kind of this otherworldly place. You just, you look at it and you go, am I in a sci-fi movie or what?
Yeah. I mean, that story to me is just, it shows that, when I say, oh yeah, I haven't been there yet, but it shows what people can do and get, we were talking about this on the last podcast about, get past your comfort zone. Like that's really getting past your comfort zone, to be out there. And that's how these amazing things happen. And that's how a lot of our national parks were formed, were people getting out of their comfort zone to make it happen and protect it, So,
Absolutely.
That's it's an amazing, all of it is amazing stories. And, thank you so much. Fire Monkey. So I think our next time, I know you have a little segment with us coming up on another show. But I think we're not doing national parks next time in November. I think we're going to do Japan. You're heading out of the country again?
Yes, absolutely. Ooh. I'm heading to Japan for a couple of weeks to do an interesting tour in an area of Japan that is not often visited much. I mean, it's a little bit more, what I say, off the beaten path, so to speak. And so I'm very excited about it, having lived and taught in Japan years and years ago, and having gone back. But it's been probably several decades since I have been back, and this is an area of the country that I have not really explored. So I'm very excited because it's a very rural area. So it should be interesting. Plus, I love the food, so I can't wait for that.
Oh my gosh! By the way, how was the food in the last two parks? I want to say, like, what is the food of Alaska? And you lived in Alaska too, so what should people expect traveling to Alaska is on the menu? What is Alaskan cuisine? Fish?
Well, there's a lot of fish because, of all the water bodies, the bodies of water around, lovely salmon and halibut, depending on season, and all that kind of stuff, shrimp and crab and you name it. And then there's meat. I mean, there's, definite meat, but, it's, when I lived there, people were, they'd always say, we got some, venison. You want some extra venison? Or we got a moose. Do you want some moose? And I mean, I don't eat, red meat or that, but still it's very popular, and people who do subsistence living, that's what they do, is live off the land, or live off the water, whatever it is, So, but the menus have, a mixture of many things. But if you do want to try some good, fresh wild salmon, for example, or, halibut, it's delicious and wonderful. And I was in heaven because I am a true pescatarian. So that works for me.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Again, the link is in the episode notes for Debbie's article about Katmai. So check that out, or just go to nationalparktraveling.com and you will see it there. Just type in Katmai National Park. You'll find her and maybe a couple other stories, but you'll see Debbie there. And many other stories from Debbie. So, hey, listen, safe travels to Japan. We cannot wait to hear what happens there. So thanks so much. Take care.
Sounds good. Thank you. Take care too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Big Blend Radio's Global Adventures Show with travel writer Debbie Stone. Debbie is here every fourth Tuesday. You can keep up with us at bigblendradio.com.